Hey, y'all.
Hola, welcome to 30 Minutes Down South. She's Allison.
And he's Carlos, and we are two top producing realtors.
With two extremely different Southern upbringings.
Join us each week as we explore the Lake Murray area with our special guests.
Welcome, Allison, to another episode of 30 Minutes Down South.
Hi, Carlos. You sure are peppy today.
Well, I am because this is the first time that we have a guest and you do not know who the guest is.
Right? I mean, you wouldn't even tell me.
I kept you in.
Apparently, it's going to be good.
Well, it is. You know why?
Why?
Because you might get recruited today.
For what?
You want to know?
Yeah.
Are you curious?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's roll.
All right, let's meet him.
And welcome, Sean. And I'm going to let Allison pronounce your last name.
Delaney-Gesing? Is that correct? All right.
Delaney-Gesing. Let me guess, Irish and German.
Oh, man. It's almost like we had this conversation.
So welcome to our show, Sean. How about you tell us a little bit about your background and what do you do for a living?
Sure. I'm originally from the west side of Cleveland, Ohio, a small little community called Bay Village, lakefront community. My wife is the one that is from South Carolina. She's originally from Malden. And so that's how I ended up down here in South Carolina. I've been down here on and off since 2013. I got involved in recruiting in 2018, but to back it up a little bit, I joined the National Guard in 2011. I joined the Ohio Army National Guard, and then when I met my wife, I transferred down here to South Carolina. And originally I was a culinary specialist. That's what I enlisted as. So I cooked for the first 7 years of my career. And so if you like food, it's a great career opportunity. You're never far away from food, and you're always eating something good. Yep. Oh, food's good.
That's me. I'm the foodie.
And around 2018, got involved in recruiting. And that was twofold. It was out of a love of people and being able to share the impact the National Guard's had on my life. I earned my degree from the University of Akron up in Ohio. I have a bachelor's in business and organizational communication. And so it was a natural fit to get into recruiting where I got to utilize the people skills, the public speaking skills, and being able to, like I said, convey how much the Guard has done for me and how much I think it can do for others once they see the opportunities that we have. So in 2018, got involved in recruiting. From about 2018 to 2021, I worked in the upstate out of my wife's old high school, ironically, out of Malden High School. And then in 2021, I had the opportunity to transfer down here to the Columbia area. And within recruiting, I worked for our marketing office doing digital marketing. And then in roughly June of last year, I transferred back out to what we call field recruiting or street recruiting. And I've been stationed out of the Lexington recruiting location here in Flight Deck. If folks watching know where that is, since about August of last year. And so the two high schools I have assigned to me right now are Chapin High School and Spring Hill High School, and they are fantastic schools with a lot of great people in them. And we're just trying to impart some of the knowledge and the education about what the Army National Guard is and what we can do for you.
So, Sean, tell us a little bit about what made you decide to join the Army National Guard to begin with.
Right. So when I was in about midway through college at the University of Akron, I was about $40,000 in student loan debt. And up to that point, I had always had the interest in serving in the military. I just didn't know in what capacity I wanted to serve or what branch I wanted to serve. I had originally considered the Air Force. And for all the reasons that people say, it sounds so easy. And really, the main reason I chose the Guard is because we have a unique dual mission. So we serve not only the state that we live in. So at the time, I was living in Ohio. So we served Ohio. And then here in South Carolina, we serve South Carolina primarily. So when you think of natural disasters, hurricanes, floods, in Ohio, blizzards, right? That's the National Guard that's actually out there responding to those scenarios and being able to provide that frontline support to our community and giving back to the citizens in our state. Which, when you think of the military, most folks that I've talked to think that, you go overseas. While that is a part of what we do, It's not all we do. And like I said, our primary mission is to serve the state. Now, because we are state and federal, we do have the same opportunities to be able to go overseas, or even here in the United States to be able to serve in various different missions that the Army does, because we are a reserve component of the U.S. Army. So we are part of the Army, hence why we wear the exact same uniforms, have the exact same ranks, go to the exact same schools. The only difference is we serve part-time. So for those who have careers, who want to go to school, pursue a degree, pursue advanced degrees, whatever it may be, the Army National Guard affords you the opportunity to be able to serve part-time, 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks out of the year. That's primarily what a majority of our force serves. And that allows the opportunity Monday through Friday of being able to go work a regular job and go pursue your degree, go pursue a certification or a trade school, whatever it may be. But the neat part about the National Guard is that because we have a dual mission of state and federal, we are able to offer the most college tuition assistance, or I should say the most education assistance. So the state, through the education lottery, so if you ever play the lottery, thank you so much. You're providing some money for our soldiers. The state gives $5,500 per academic year to be able to go to school. Now, that's based on it being a South Carolina school. So think your USCs, your Landers, your Coastal Carolinas. That is what we're talking about when we say state tuition assistance. Now, because we are a reserve component of the Army, we still get the same funding that the Army gets. So $4,000 per academic year of federal tuition assistance to be able to go pursue a degree, but also to be able to go to trade schools or to do certification programs. So if college isn't your thing, there's still a way for you to use that education assistance for something that might spike your interest, whether it's cosmetology, welding, plumbing, whatever it may be. Because one thing I've noticed is that we have a huge need for the trades right now. You look around, there's a lot of construction projects going on around the state. They need people to fill those jobs. And so what better way to be able to help out your state and your community than working in a trade, to be able to start building the infrastructure that we need to be able to be successful in the future. So that's the major reason I chose the Guard. Very different mission than the U.S. Army, but also you can still do a lot of the cool things that the Army gets to do.
That is awesome, man. That is awesome. What is the basic requirements to join the National Guard?
So traditionally, anyone between 17 and 35 is able to join.
Oh, you're almost there, Addison.
Aged out.
Yeah, I thought you were in your early 30s. So
aren't you sweet, Sean?
Right. But what I think most people think is that, there's a once 35 hits, that's it. Now, we are entertaining waivers currently, right? And this is subject to change, so I will say that, up to 42 years old, okay? Now, what that means is if you're between 17 and 35, or you meet all the other requirements up to 42, we can consider a waiver. But traditionally, 17 to 35, you have to meet two requirements. You have to make sure you can pass the ASVAB, which, if you haven't heard of that, that is the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. Big fancy word of saying an entrance test. If you've taken the SAT or any of those high school exams, it's made by the same people. And what it does is it tests multiple areas. So depending on the version of the test you take, it's between 8 and 9 sections. And currently the 4 sections that we're looking at that determine your overall score, especially if you hear someone say, I got a 50 on the ASVAB or I got a 60, right? That is dependent on you doing well on arithmetic reasoning, mathematics knowledge, word knowledge, and paragraph comprehension. If you can do well on those 4, that score that I got a 50 or I got a 60, that's what that is determined by. The rest of those sections are auto and shop, mechanical, assembling objects, and all those sections do is help us narrow down your job selection choices. So, for example, I didn't grow up working on cars. I wasn't the greatest at mechanical. But because I did well on those, what I call the core 4 sections, my score was good. I just didn't qualify for a lot of the mechanical jobs, which is fine because, part of this test is gauging your weaknesses and your strengths. And obviously we want to take your strengths into account when we're looking at your job selection choices. So you have the ASVAB done, okay? We have a good score. You need a 31 or higher to get in. Typically. Now, there are certain scenarios where we can take a lower score, But that's something I would talk to your recruiter about at the time that you meet with him or her. So you have a passing score, 31 or higher. The other thing, the other part of this that we need to look at is the medical side. So this is where a lot of people are getting tripped up lately. You've probably known someone that's been on medication for ADHD or ODD, or I call them the other ABCs, right? Mm-hmm. Part of your medical side is we got to look at your whole medical history, right? All the way back to birth. Because what's happening now is there's this program called Genesis. Genesis, the way it came about was the military needed a MyChart, right? When you go to your civilian healthcare provider, you can go look at MyChart for your lab results or for test results, whatever it may be. So the military, we came up with something called Genesis. That's our version of MyChart. The other side of Genesis is that it's being used to look at folks coming into the military and to take a look at all their prescription history. So they're typically scrutinizing the last 3 years, but they can go all the way back to birth, okay? And so what we want to know as a recruiter coming in the door is what medical issues or what medical concerns should we be aware of to be able to give you the best chance possible of being able to get into the military. I will say that just because you have something in your past medically that could come up, that doesn't mean you're necessarily disqualified for military service. That just means we as the recruiter need to go to bat for you in determining, hey, is this particular condition that you have or something you had in your past going to cause us some speed bumps when it comes time to be able to try to get you enlisted in the military? So that's something that we look at. Once we have your academic and then your medical put together, then we schedule you to go up to Fort Jackson to what we call the Military Entrance Processing Station, or you'll hear it called MEPS. And MEPS is a place where they are literally trying to find anything that could keep you from being able to serve in the military. There's a reason why we're the less than 1% who serve. It's not because we're elitists or we're the best of the best. It's because, right, medical standards keep a lot of people from being able to join. Okay, along obviously with ASVAB, but lately it's been medical. So part of MEPS, when we take you up there, is we're going to present all your information to them. You've got a passing ASVAB score. Here's all their medical history. And then MEPS is going to say, yes, this person is good to go. They physically are able to be in the military. And then at that point, you can enlist into a job that you pick based on how well you do on the ASVAB and you having a good physical, because you will get a medical physical up there. That's why it's important that we have all that stuff put together when we go up there to give you the best chance of being able to get in.
So, Sean, you can pick your job before boot camp and before any of that? I thought it was a sign.
No. So some branches, we won't name any names, but some branches call open contracts, where you'll come in and then they will assign your job down the line. We don't work that way. The way we work is once you take your ASVAB, and you can actually do that here in our office, you can take a practice ASVAB. It is the full test, right? We say it takes about you get 3 hours to take it. It takes about an hour and a half, depending on the person. Once you get done with that, we can see your scores immediately. So we can tell you, hey, you did really well in math, or we're going to have to brush up on math a little bit, or maybe it's reading, whatever it may be. We can see all your scores. Then we can take those scores, we put them into a spreadsheet that we have here, and it shows you exactly what you are qualified for and what you are not qualified for. So then we can have that realistic conversation of, hey, buddy, okay, this is what you can actually do in the military. What do you want to do? And then that individual will go through and we'll tell them, I typically tell them, pick 3 to 5 jobs that you're interested in, okay? And what I will do is we get a list every day, tells us what is available. Right? Based on what they selected, I'm going to tell you what's actually available here in the state and the locations of those units. Because our goal at the end of the day is when you go for your 1 weekend a month and your 2 weeks in the summer, we don't want you to have to drive to Greenville if I have the exact same job here in the Lexington, Columbia area. It just doesn't make sense. It's your gas money. Why would you want to spend that? So we'll take a look at that. And then once that person says, yep, that's exactly the job I want, we'll put a hold on it, just like you would a reservation at a hotel. And we get a certain period of time, typically about 9 days, where that is that person's job. So when we go to the Military Entrance Processing Station, there is a portion at the end where they will meet with one of our guidance counselors. And they will sit there and go through everything that they are signing up for. They'll know going up there what their job's going to be, where their job's going to be located, right? if there's any bonuses or additional incentives for joining at the time. They're going to know that as well going up there.
Can you give us? I'm sorry. Can you give us an idea of the type of jobs that we're talking about?
We are talking about anything from your typical trade jobs. So you think plumbers, electricians, vertical and horizontal engineers. So folks who build the infrastructure, folks who actually build the buildings. We're talking aviation. We have 4 types of helicopters here in the state of South Carolina, 2 in the upstate and 2 down here in the Midlands. And we're talking field artillery, right? The big cannons that you see, I call them the boom booms. We've got air defense artillery. So air defense actually has a unique mission. They do go over sometimes to Germany to support their active duty counterparts, but primarily they're being sent to Washington, D.C., and they provide airspace security for the capital region. So you have to think, guarding the pillars of democracy, they are literally guarding the pillars of democracy. So if there's any threats that come in from the air, they're the first line of defense to be able to defend the capital region. We have folks that work in our medical command. We have medics. We have dental hygienists, radiology specialists. We've got folks that work in clerical and human resources. Those certifications translate directly to the civilian side. We've got motor transport, culinary, supply. If you've ever thought of working for a logistics company, going to Amazon, automated logistics, we have that here. Unit supply, if you're looking for a full-time job in the National Guard, which we'll cover, I'm sure, there are opportunities for those, and there are jobs that set you up a little better than others for opportunities like that. So the spectrum of jobs.
It sounds like it's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. I've only covered just a slice of that.
So I think that's really neat that, when someone is looking to enlist, they can already know what they're doing. I didn't realize that either, Carlos.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. When you eventually go through all those details, when you're sitting up at MEPS, the only question you're probably going to have is, where am I going for basic training? We can't tell you that up front, only because that's based on reservations. Okay. Just like a hotel, like I said before, if we have a slot open at Fort Jackson to send you, okay, you'll go to Fort Jackson. But then we also have 3 other sites. There's Fort Moore, which used to be Fort Benning in Georgia. There's Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and then there's Fort Sill in Oklahoma. So some of where you go is determined by the job you pick. For example, if you pick field artillery, there's a high likelihood you're going to go to Fort Sill for your basic training and your job school. We call it one station unit training, or you stay at the exact same place for all your training.
So sorry, Sean, about how long does that last for the basic training and job school?
Yep. So basic training is 10 weeks. From start to finish. Your first week is what we call reception battalion. So that's where you're getting your uniforms, you're getting your medical checkups, all your paperwork's getting in order to make sure that we can pay you. And then the 9 weeks of actual basic training, where you're learning the basic skills that you need to be a soldier, right? How to walk, talk, act like a soldier, how to understand what ranks are on people's chests, who to salute, when to salute them. All the basic things you're going to need to be successful. And then your job school, the length of that varies depending on how technical the job is. So for culinary, mine was 8 weeks. And I was up at what is now Fort Greg Adams in Virginia, right outside Colonial Heights, if anyone knows where that is. Now, our more technical jobs, if you get into cyber or computer type jobs, those are going to be longer, right? Those could be up as high as 20 some weeks. We have a job that we rarely see filled, only because it requires a bachelor's degree in something computer science related, which is cyber operations. That's 50 some weeks long, about 52 weeks long. So again, depends how technical the job is, but you're looking at on average between 8 and 15 weeks.
That's pretty cool, man. That's pretty good. And obviously, while you're studying, you have place to sleep and you have the free food. And what about payment? What about salary? What are people expect when they join the National Guard?
So we do a rough average when we hand out our fact sheets. It's based on an E2, which you'll come in initially as an E1. E stands for enlisted. 1 is the first pay grade. So E2, basically, you're looking at about $250 some for a drill weekend. That's 1 weekend a month. But the thing is, your pay is dependent on the rank you are and how long you've been in the military. So coming in the door, just because you make a certain amount doesn't mean you can't raise that amount. And there are multiple ways to do that after you enlist. And then the other thing, when you go to basic training, you are getting paid on the active duty pay scale. So that is the same as your counterpart who lives at Fort Jackson 24/7, and that's their full-time job. You get that payment. And the nice part is every year, not always every year, but typically every year you'll see a increase from Congress. Congress will raise pay a certain percentage point. So you'll see an increase there every year in your pay. So there really is no set amount. It's just dependent on how long you're in and what your rank is. So there's obviously an incentive to do what you got to do to get your rank going up.
Right.
And on top of that, you got all the benefits. Like we work a lot with people that qualify for a VA loan, which has very interesting and very helpful qualities on the loan for the veterans. Also, education. Now, the next question is, how long is the contract for? So if you want to join the National Guard, how long is the minimum to be signed up with you?
So you can call it contracts. People think that's a dirty word for some reason. I mean,
we use that every day.
You guys in real estate, right? So you do contracts to buy a house, you do contracts to buy a car. But contract commitment, whatever you want to call it, everyone equals 8 years. So it's not really dependent on the branch. It's just dependent on what you want out of the experience that determines how you fill those 8 years. So if you want all of our education benefits, that's what we call a 6x2. So 6 years of serving 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks out of the year after you're done with your initial training. And then 2 years of what we call the inactive ready reserve, or you'll hear it called the IRR. And basically what that is you take a phone call once a year. Hey, if something horrible goes on, another 9/11 or a World War III scenario, are you good to be called back? And you're like, well, still under commitment, so yeah, guess I am, right? And that's for those 2 years. You're not going to drill for those 2 years. You're not getting paid. You can grow your beard out, grow your hair out. It's just a way for the military to have a pool of qualified people that if the worst case scenario were happen, a national emergency, we have the ability to call qualified people back in. But that's typically what we see for folks who want the full educational benefits. If you've already been through college and you're like, you know what, I've already got my degree, don't really need any of those education benefits, I just want to come serve, or I want to join for the healthcare because we have great healthcare rates. We'll see folks do a 3x5. So just the same setup as a 6x2, 3 years of 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks out of the year, and then 5 years where they take that phone call once a year.
So, Sean, I know, we hear so much buzz and in the news that not nearly as many people are wanting to serve in the military. I mean, you work on recruitment. So what are you seeing on that side, especially with kids coming out of high school, college? What do you feel, how do the numbers really look?
From our vantage point, we don't have an issue. I mean, the biggest thing is interest, right? And interest in, let's say 10, 15 years ago, a lot of it was patriotism. And there's a common misconception, I think, that because I serve in the military, right, it's because I'm patriotic. I want to do this for my country. And sometimes that's not the reality, and that's okay. Everyone serves for a different reason. It might not be patriotism. It's not that you don't love your country. It's just that's not your primary reason for serving. It could be education, right? You see the cost of college and realize that whether you get a degree or not, the university is still getting your money in some way, shape, or form, right? So it could be the cost of college. You want to go to college to get a degree. I'll use the example of a gentleman I put in who is first generation college. Parents didn't think they'd be able to pay for college. He never thought he'd be able to go to college. And now he is going to University of South Carolina, and he has an internship with a financial firm this summer, doing great things for himself and making his family proud. And he never thought he'd have that opportunity without the Guard. There's folks who come, like I said, for healthcare. Average premium is $500 to $700 a month, give or take, for healthcare. And this gentleman's paying $230 some to $250 some a month. And it doesn't matter how many folks are in his family, he still pays that. So there's different reasons why people serve. And I think as the years go by, those reasons sometimes change and they fluctuate. But the general reason we've seen is, there's some reason they want to do it. And finding out what that reason is, I think helps us recruit a little bit easier, because the way we operate is when you come sit in our office, it's not about me, right? We know that the military needs people to be able to do a lot of the jobs that we have. But one of the unique things about the Guard is I think we get down to, what can I do for you? Because this is their career. This is their opportunity to be able to do bigger, better things with their life, with the opportunities and the resources and the money that we have within the Army National Guard. And so finding out why that person wants to do this, that's the first step. Because I tell folks all the time, this is your career. At the end of the day, when you go home to your family or to your parents, right, the decisions you make affect you, and then by default will eventually affect your family. So if I can help you get to where you want to go, then we're doing great, right? Because that's my job. My job is to make whatever your plan is, whatever your goal is, fit into what the National Guard has to offer to be able to give you the greatest chance of being successful with whatever that plan is down the line. So I haven't seen anything in regards to, an issue with recruiting. It's just finding the folks that, one, have the propensity to want to serve, or two, have a need in their life that they are trying to, or need or a goal that they are trying to fulfill, and they just need us to be able to help get them across the finish line.
I mean, I think that is, if somebody qualifies to join any branch of the military, but especially the National Guard, seems a little bit more tied into the civilian life. And
Yes.
also give you the opportunity to give it a shot. So if you are not really into that strict military life, you can stick with the civilian. However, if you love that life, you can make it a full-time job like yourself, correct?
You can. There's about 10,000 Army National Guard men and women here in South Carolina. About 7,000 of those serve part-time, so the 1 week in a month, 2 weeks out of the year, and they're perfectly content with that. They're fine going to their civilian job Monday through Friday. And then, 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year, they put on the uniform, and I equate it to being Superman or Wonder Woman, right? You rip off the civilian clothes and you got the uniform on there, you go do a job, get back to your state and community and your country. And then you go back to being, mild-mannered person Monday through Friday. And, but there are folks, like you said, about 3,000 who have decided that, this is something that I want to do full-time. I really like wearing the uniform every day. And they think they need to go to the active duty Army. And they don't. They can actually stay here in South Carolina, become what we call Active Guard Reserve, which means we are full-time, we are active duty, we are just under control of the state, but we receive the same pay and benefits as someone who lives at Fort Jackson. The benefit of doing it full-time with us is that every 3 years or 3 or 4 years, when our counterparts at Fort Jackson have to move to another location, another duty station, we don't have to. We can stay here in South Carolina and continue the life that we've been living. You get to live where you want to live. You don't have to live on base. And it's great for those who really love being around family, don't want to have to uproot their lives every couple of years. And like I said, same pay and benefits. Now, the great part is, let's say you get a great job in another state. Every state and the territories, Puerto Rico, Guam, right, have National Guard. And so I'm from Ohio. I'm a prime example. I decided to come to South Carolina because I met my wife, and it was literally one sheet of paper that got me transferred down here. They found the same job, and I transferred here, and it was that easy. So don't think just because you join the South Carolina Army National Guard and you get a job in California or Ohio that you can't move, right? Would we love you to stay here? Yes. But we also understand life happens, and, if you have to move, you have to move.
Sean, you've done a really great job of.
Amazing. Yeah, I want to join.
You're too old. Even if they give the waiver, you and I are too old. But no, really, I mean, this has been great. I told you before we came on, I mean, I've known people my whole life in the National Guard, but never truly understood it. And I think you've explained it in a really great way. And I bet you're a great recruiter too.
How do people can find you, Sean? How somebody that hears, somebody has a son or a grandchild that is interested on it? Because obviously we're too old.
Yes.
Thank you, Allison, for the reminder.
I look too old. Y'all look young.
It's all the ring lights and filters Carlos has.
So where can people find you, Sean?
Yeah, so if you want to get in touch with me, we're assigned zip codes here. So I have, if you live in 29212, Harbison Mall, that type area, or 29036, Chapin area, I would be your recruiter. And you can contact me at 803-394-1162. Or if you don't live in those areas and I'm not your recruiter, we have a great resource, nationalguard.com. And you scroll all the way to the bottom. There is a find a recruiter function, and you type in your zip code, and it'll pull up the recruiter for your area. And that's nationally. So if, let's say, you're seeing this from out of state, and you're like, well, he's in South Carolina, that's okay, because that will work for any state and any territory. So you can find your local recruiter.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it, and for your service.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sean.
Well, that was a nice surprise.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, Sean's great.
He's awesome, man. He really described the job, the opportunity, because I think that's what it is. You know, it is an opportunity, not just to serve, but to gain education, to learn a trade, even if you don't want to do it full time, or even if you don't want to do it ever. I mean, it's only 3 years, and then 5. That's a minimum. I think that everybody should do it. Everybody should give it a shot.
I think more people would if they understood more.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, you said, I think there's so many misconceptions. And I mean, I didn't realize the opportunities that you have with it, but I also didn't realize how much autonomy of like choosing what you're doing either.
I mean, if you qualify both on the ASVAB test and you qualify medically, I don't think there's actually a reason, unless you're getting a full ride on a very prestigious college, or you're getting a scholarship because of athletics, or something around those lines, that I would say, well, maybe you can do it later or whatever. I don't know. This is a conversation I'm definitely going to have with my son. He's 13, so Sean, maybe a couple years
Not
from
much
now.
longer.
He's moving up a lot. And little secret, I don't know if you know, that I haven't told anybody. Well, I have told a
Now
bunch
you're
of
telling
people.
everybody.
Now I'm going to tell everybody. But I did actually apply for the military back in 2011.
You did tell me that.
I told you that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was in New York. I was working in New York on the summers. At that point, I was still a Venezuelan national. So I didn't have green card or anything. It's just one of those wild days in New York when we can come over, work for cash, and then go back home. So I did that back in 2011, and I was there when the Twin Towers were blown up. And a couple days later, the whole United States military reinforced the recruitment area in Times Square.
I think a lot of people signed up after that.
So I went without telling anybody. I did my line, wrote down my paperwork. I think it was the Marine Corps back then. And while the guys is taking me in there, he's like, "Oh, what's your social security number?" I'm like, "I don't have one." Well, you kind of need one to join. I'm like, "Really?" I mean, like, I can put some numbers in there. Like, no, it's not that easy.
Yeah.
So
A little bit of red tape there.
Yeah, now I know. I got some friends that after a couple years, they were issuing green cards and social security number after you join, after you serve. So I have a couple of friends of mine that went out that route, and one of them is actually still active military.
Okay.
The other one is a retired Navy. My little niece, she's in Spain right now. She's serving on the Navy. So yeah, I mean,
that's awesome.
yeah,
I didn't
we
know
do
all
have
that.
A little bit of a military.
Well, good. Well, I enjoyed him. So maybe you can surprise me with another guest.
Listen, you're under 42, right?
We're not discussing my age. I said I would not make the waiver. Let's just put it that way.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us, and hope to see you next week.
That's right.
Bye.
Bye.